Coming up in today's Leeds news, Meslier termination could lead to Celtic switch. Bornauw move ruled out for now. January plans for Leeds, and Valencia interested in Jack Harrison. Hi folks, welcome to the Leeds View, Tuesday the 30th of December. With your Leeds United news, there's a Daniel Farke press conference later on today before the Liverpool game on New Year's Day. We will have a reaction to that press conference over on bigup.com. If you want to come and join us over there after he has finished with his presser, you can do that. Also, to let you know, the podcast will be out tonight to have a little look back at the December that Leeds have had, as well as looking ahead to the Liverpool game and maybe even a little bit of a look ahead to what Leeds need to do come the January transfer window. Today's news is full from start to finish of January transfer news. A lot of it coming out in the last couple of days, and is likely to continue to happen over the next 2 days as we get ready for the window to open. It's not all good news, I will say that. Also, thanks to everyone who subscribed yesterday. It's been a huge jump, and I really appreciate that as well. And if you want to subscribe to the channel and like the content, they are the two best ways to support the channel. Right, let's move on. We'll start off with Ilan Meslier's situation. Not going to go away until Ilan Meslier goes away, I suppose, but it's looking increasingly unlikely that Leeds United are going to move Ilan Meslier on in January for any kind of a fee. But according to The Athletic, a mutual termination could be an option that Leeds United will explore come the new year. This will depend on whether the club feel that it is in their interest to move him off the wage bill nice and early and try and free up some money for potential loan moves in January. The Athletic have spoken to several Leeds United club sources who have asked to remain anonymous to protect relationships, and they say that Leeds are looking to sell several players in the January transfer window, with Ilan Meslier, Jack Harrison and possibly even Joel Piroe name-checked in the piece. Baron Cross in The Athletic says that a termination of Ilan Meslier's contract once the winter window opens could be an option for Leeds, similar to what they did with Patrick Bamford in the summer, and that would open the door for an early move to a new club for Ilan Meslier. And if reports in Scotland are to be believed, Celtic are still very much interested in the Leeds United shotstopper. Reports in Scotland say that new Celtic manager Wilfred Nancy would like to replace current goalkeeper Kasper Schmeichel, and Ilan Meslier is very high on his wish list. Celtic are labelled as being very interested in the keeper, and the French shotstopper fits the mould of what his countryman Nancy wants to bring in to the club. Schmeichel's form has definitely dropped off a little bit over the last season and a half for Celtic. A lot of fans are commenting on it, and they will likely replace him in some form or another come January, and Meslier could be an option. But Meslier does have other suitors in Italy, in Belgium and in France as well. So again, as we've said before, this is very much in his hands to decide what he does with his own future. But it does seem that keeping him on the books for the rest of the season seems like a waste of money from a Leeds perspective. If they can negotiate a cut price termination with the player and move him on, they can then move forward with a few extra quid in the bank, maybe for loans, which does seem like Leeds' most obvious route come the winter window. But it is one that we'll have to keep an eye on for the next couple of weeks. Anyway, it's likely to rumble on a little bit longer before we know exactly what's happening. If we get to the end of the window and he's still with Leeds, then we know he is heading off on a free transfer in the summer. It was interesting in the press conference last week that they did ask about Ilan Meslier's future, but nobody followed up that by asking, well, are you offering him a new contract if you don't want to sell him? Which was the obvious question for me, but it appears that's not the case, and he will move on from Leeds at some point. We'll see if it goes in the next week or two. Let's move on. Let's talk about Sebastian Bornauw. Yesterday we had the news from Bild in Germany that FC Cologne were interested in bringing their former centre-back and current Leeds centre-back Sebastian Bornauw back to the club, with Leeds possibly even open to the exit of the player as well. Leeds were also linked with a move for RB Leipzig young centre-back El Shadal Bichiabu. But fresh reports this morning confirm what most of us had already suspected. Due to the injury of Joe Rodon, Leeds United are said to not be in a rush to make any decision over Sebastian Bornauw's immediate future until they know the full extent of Rodon's injury and the recovery time that will be needed for the Welsh centre-back. Bornauw is still said to be high on FC Cologne's shopping list this January and is labelled as a primary target according to Bild. But a quick exit from Leeds for the centre-back seems a little bit more unlikely now at this point, and this could be one that does still happen, but happens probably towards the end of the transfer window once Leeds have Joe Rodon back, or if Leeds do bring in El Shadil Bichiabu on loan. Covers that spot for Leeds in the short term. They do have Ethan Ampadu, obviously, who can sit in there, but you don't want to just mess up that midfield that we've got right now with things going as well as they are. But there is more updates on Leeds United's January transfer business from The Athletic. I'll get to that now. As mentioned at the start of the video, The Athletic have spoken to several Leeds United sources who are close to the transfer business, and again, who have all asked to remain anonymous about the club's plans in and out in this window. And they say there is every chance that Leeds United will dip into the transfer market to bring in reinforcements, as well as try and move on a few players to free up some money and space within that squad. Daniel Farke is not keen to work with a bloated squad. He likes to work with a slimmer squad, and they will move players on if they are going to bring players in, which everybody at this point had expected. Cross says that Leeds wanted 2 additional attacking players at the end of the summer transfer window, something we all heard Daniel Farke say, and the January window is now being labelled as the time where Leeds United will move for these as key priorities, as well as trying to bring in options to the new adapted 3-5-2-3-5-3 system that the club are playing. In the piece, Cross says that there are no legitimate links right now to any new targets, but he does name check Harry Wilson and Facundo Buonanotte, and Buonanotte could have his loan cancelled at Chelsea and return to Bournemouth, and Leeds are said to still be very interested in bringing him to the club. Exits also seem very likely, and according to Cross, club sources claim that they do not see any suitors meeting the club's demands on players at this moment in time, but Meslier, Harrison and Pirou are all possible options to move away from the club in some capacity. Loan exits at this point seem unlikely, and it doesn't really help Leeds from a PSR perspective, but Leeds can still buy players without having to sell anybody in January, but they will need to bring in money before the 30th of June PSR deadline. Club sources say that there should be no expectations on the club spending tens of millions of pounds in this window, and that loans seem like the most likely route for Leeds. So we can rule out, probably over the next 4 weeks, any talk of £30 million signings from Leeds. Troy Parrott's been mentioned a lot over the last couple of months, but he will be anything from 25 to £30 million, so you can probably rule that one out straight away. We are more likely back in the £7 to £10 million bracket and loan bracket, because that's where we were at the end of the summer transfer window. Leeds did try to buy Harry Wilson for between 7 to 10 million. Gus Hamer was mentioned at that time as well. There is still that money floating around, and loans was what they did try to move for Facundo Buonanotte on, so that could still be there as well. The other side to this is it is a World Cup year, and there could be some very interesting loan options that become available in the next couple of weeks. There are plenty of players across world football who are trying to get into World Cup squads and be part of the international setup. Players that want to start for their international sides as well. So minutes will be very, very important for players that are finding themselves maybe out of favour at certain clubs right now. So Leeds could capitalise on that. It is an unusual January window in that capacity. But there is one fresh link of an exit this morning, and that comes from Spain. And there's a bit more credibility in this one than there has been in most. It's coming from 2 fairly reliable sources at this point. We'll move on and talk about Jack Harrison now. It's not one that I think most of us saw leaving in January, but due to the lack of minutes, lack of form, and lack of any real impact, Jack Harrison is maybe keen on a move away from Leeds United now himself, more so than maybe he would have been at the start of the season. According to reports in Spain from Spanish outlet Marca, as well as Marco Moretti, Valencia are said to be very keen on bringing Jack Harrison to the club, and a reunion with former Leeds United under-21 coach Carlos Corberán. Valencia currently have Largi Ramazani on loan there. He's just come back from being out with an injury for a considerable amount of time, and they're reintegrating him into the squad. They don't kick off their second half of their season until the 4th of January, but they are now said to want to bring in Jack Harrison as well. Market claim that contact between Leeds United and Valencia has already taken place, and they go a step further in this, and they say that negotiations between Valencia and the players' representatives have also taken place and are underway right now. Given Harrison's form over the past 2 seasons with Everton and with Leeds, maybe a complete change of scenery is exactly what he needs to kickstart his career, and a move to Valencia and La Liga will be seen as a very strong move for Jack Harrison. Valencia have had an injury crisis this season, which hasn't helped their league position, so trying to bring in some level of reinforcements is high on their priority list. But market claim the Leeds would love to sell Jack Harrison in January, and a sale would represent a pure PSR profit for Leeds United at this point. But they claim a loan option is still possible. Leeds would need to include an option to buy or an obligation if that was to happen. So going back to Baron Cross's piece in The Athletic and trying to connect all the dots on this to build a proper picture. The loan still doesn't really help Leeds United from a PSR perspective. Yeah, it does free up a significant amount of wages should Leeds decide to bring in a loan option. But if Leeds can negotiate an obligation to purchase before the 30th of January, they could be in a very strong position here of getting Arison's wages off their wage bill right now and bringing in some money before the 30th of June deadline in order to maybe spend some money in the January window as well. It would work out perfectly for Leeds. Now, the other side of that is a potential option to buy, but we've seen over several years of Leeds dealings anyway with Spanish clubs that options don't always tend to work out. Spanish clubs seem to use option as the carrot to try and get these players on short-term deals and never really have any intentions of actioning the option to buy the players. So right now, an option would be no good to Leeds, from my perspective at least anyway. An obligation will put Leeds in a strong position, or a full-on sale. So it will be very interesting. If Leeds can box clever in this situation, they could put themselves give themselves a strong hand even coming into the January transfer window. But there's going to be a lot more talk over the next couple of weeks. It's going to pick up. There are players at Leeds that will definitely need to move on. There is said to be significant interest in the Championship on Joe Piroux as well. Ipswich have been named, as well as Sheffield United and Leicester also having a look. But Leicester have got their own financial situation that they have to navigate now. They could be selling players in January and about to get a points deduction as well. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting transfer window. The World Cup is the obvious piece for me as well, of that could just make things a little bit more different than we've seen in previous January transfer windows. Leeds have only ever made one signing under the current ownership in January, and that was Connor Robertson deadline day on loan 2 years ago. So we'll see if they can get their finger out early this year and get moving. But folks, that will be it for me on the news today. Back tonight for the podcast out for 7:30. You can check that out across all the audio platforms, along with the news, as well as on YouTube. And if you do want to give us a like and a subscribe, that would be massively appreciated. Well, have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you later. And bigup.com for the press conference reaction. I'll see you later on. Bye.